Well, ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker for the day is going to be Sandra Ospina. She has over a decade of experience in teaching from nursery to college freshmen. Technology has always been an essential tool in her teaching. For the last 7 years, she has been working in the Middle East and is inspired by the rapid and positive changes she has seen in the educational sector. She is excited to be a part of that chain as a leader and educator. Let's go ahead and welcome Sandra on board.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. My name is Sandra Ospina. I am an assistant principal of academic data here at Miss Schools in Saudi Arabia, Riyadh. And the topic that I would like to discuss today is using universal design UDL and SAMR and how to equitably transform tech integration in our classrooms. So, and to guide our talk today and talking about inclusive classroom tech integration, we're going to look at the why, the what, and the how. So the why. So the pandemic has obviously created sort of a new opportunity to revisit the role of technology in education and how are we using that technology in our classrooms. But as we have seen now over 2 years of online learning, that these opportunities also do pose challenges in terms of inclusion. So in thinking about how can we best reach all our learners, we need to make sure that the technology that we use in our classrooms do transform learning for every learner. So the UDL is a framework that is used to improve and optimize teaching and learning, and is based on the scientific insights on how human learns. It talks about how human learns in terms of their different networks in our brains. So we have the affective networks, which talk about the why of learning, and is focusing on how learners engage and they stay motivated. So when we're designing or using technology in our classrooms, we have to think about, okay, how am I going to actually engage and motivate my students? What kind of technology or tools can I use in my classroom that will engage my students and will motivate them to continue to learn? So the aim and the purpose of the affective nervous and the why of learning is to stimulate interest and motivation for learning. The second network and the second sort of like principle is the what of learning, the recognition network. And here it talks about how we gather facts and categorize what we see. So it's basically talking about how do we present the information to students. So when you're planning to use a tool or creating your lessons digitally, or we're using any kind of technology, think about how do I reach all my learners? How do I best present this information to my learners? So it's thinking about presenting that information in a variety of ways. For example, using closed captioning, using videos, using all types of different media will help in the what of learning. With the strategic network in our brains, so it's the how of learning. So this looks at when we think about how students can show us what they learn. So this is allowing the flexibility for students to show us what they have learned using different tools. So not only giving the students one way to do work and show us how they learn, but opening really the door for them to show us how they learn using whatever technology they feel that they want to use and show us. And so this is coming from the Universal Design guidelines, and you can find them in the website that I posted in there. So I think in terms of when I start thinking about tools that I want to use in the classroom and technology that I want to integrate, there are different models out there that you can find. One that I particularly like, and I think it goes hand by hand with the UDL, is the SAMR model. And in this model, it really talks about integrating technology. So it starts sort of like you go and think about it as a ladder. So you start with tools that can kind of actually be used as substitutes. For example, imagine being able, you have a paper worksheet and you want to make it digital, and you just scan it and create it as a PDF. That is sort of like the lower level of the summer model, which is kind of substitution. So the tech is acting as a direct tool to substitute, but there is no functional change. Really, it's just substituting one tool for another. Then you have, moving up the ladder, you have the augmentation. And here, tech is used as a direct substitute, but now you have an improvement. For example, imagine that PDF that you actually uploaded, but now it has like a way to embed an audio in it. It has a tool to highlight. It has a tool to to highlight, to annotate. So you're actually using now the augmentation. So you're using the same kind of tool, but at a higher level. Then really, a lot of the things that I like about the summer model is the transformation. This is where I feel that our students benefit the most. And generally, it goes hand in hand with that part of the UDL. So it's the modification. So the tech allows for significant task redesign. So I'm thinking here about, for example, the students when they can show us if they're doing for example, an iMovie, they are creating their own sort of, I don't know, let's say, claymation or using a tool to show something that you wouldn't normally not do if you didn't have the tool with you, if you didn't have the technology available. Error definition, this is one I think is the hardest and it's a work in process. But for example, here I'm thinking of, let's say students meeting virtually and for example, they're having an AR and they're meeting together with the VR or they're meeting like the metaverse, that kind of thing. Like those were not thought of before. And kids come up with many different ways of showing you how they actually use technology that you necessarily didn't think of before. Or like using your video games, to learn. So all of that is within redefinition. So this is just an example here of how we can use multiple means of expression of that part, like students can do. So some of the technologies they can use, the interactive writing, the ebooks. For example, in here, your ebook is now, it's sort of like at the lower level of the summer. Then you have podcasts. Okay, so students can show you, and that is a different use of technology using the summer model. Is up in the ladder. Visual note taking, then you have narrated art. So it's really just some examples of what we can do with tools that we actually use every day, but using another lens of how does this help reach all my students, which is, I think, the most important thing. Not just how fancy our tools are, but how can they really help all our learners. So one thing that I really like when I am starting to think about a tool, or I want students to create a project, I like to present them with lots of choice boards. So this is an example. You find it in the comments. It's for free. Find it online. So there's just so many different tools available. So it's not about just what tool works, but one that you're comfortable with, one that the students can use. Think about one that might be free. But there's just the choices are so wide, and there's just so many choices out there. But what can we use? It's up to, like, first of all, what our school has available, right? What can we afford? What our students are familiar. And sometimes I know even within our my experience is that sometimes One of the difficulties in trying new technology is that you're afraid to learn. Oh my God, how long is it going to take me to learn that tool? And what I've learned is that sometimes our students know the tech better and we learn as we use it. And so don't be afraid to try something new, because our students actually are quite quick to learn the technologies. And it's just, having the courage to try them out and giving the students the opportunity to really show what they learn. So for example, another day I was creating an assessment, and the students had to create a book. So I gave them the choice of whatever tool. I gave them one tool that I prefer, but then I had students as young as this is in the third grade. They said, okay, miss, can I use it? Can I use slides to make my book? I want to add some videos. So when I said, sure, you can use that. Another student was more comfortable using Book Creator. I said, for sure, you can use Book Creator as well. If that's what you used to, definitely use Book Creator. So it's just it's just being stick to one tool, but having really the flexibility for students to try them out and just being open. So I'll just tell you about my own process as well. So when I'm thinking about what tool I want to use and purchase or try out or let the students try out, I first think about which tool has multiple uses. So which tools are very flexible. So I give you an example. A couple of years ago, we bought this beautiful glove that was interactive. It helped the students learn about the world interactively. Amazing. However, it was very limited in what else I can use it for. So although it was a cool tool to use, and at this moment it helped the students, visualize things differently, it was very limited. And so that kind of tool I probably wouldn't use in my classroom or wouldn't purchase it because it was not necessarily flexible enough for me to use it. So flexibility in not only on what I can do with the tool, but also does it allow students to create as well. So any tool that I want to bring into my classroom has to be a tool that my students can create with as well. And thinking about which tools are my students familiar with. So you're always going to have some students that love to explore technology, and they know a lot of more technologies than you do. And so you ask them, so getting to know them, getting to see, okay, what tool do you guys want to use? Do you know any tool that is particularly helpful for this? And then let them decide and let them tell you. And this is some of the tools that we have in this school. It actually has been suggestions from children, and then we vet it, see if we can actually, if it's safe, etc. And then if it is, then we actually adopt it because we want also the student voice in there as well. Is it free or cost effective? So some tools are really cool, but then you can always find an alternative that can be free or more cost effective because technology can be costly and it adds up. So just always ask yourself, is it free? Is there a free trial? Is it cost effective? Can my school get it? So this is one process. Now I'll give you an example of how I using technology in my own classroom and thinking of universal design as well. So for example, and I have a class where, I use, for example, Padlet, but I use Jamboard, right? But then I noticed one of my students was not really keen into typing. She has some issues, learning, like kind of communicating that way. So then I said, okay, you know what? We do have Padlet. Would that then be a tool that will be better in terms of my way of having that student represent what they know? Because the student can record the audio and upload it in Padlet. And it's sort of that it's a collaborative board. So all of my students are working on it at the same time. But it does have a lot more options that students can draw in there, students can input their video, input their voice. So you know what? Actually, I think Padlet might be one that I'm going to use instead of, for example, the Jamboard. Although Jamboard has this usage when you need it. Then, as we were doing this unit on plans, I wanted the end goal is for the students to create a report on what they learned about plants, on their own investigations. So I gave them choice. I said, okay, what kind of things do I want to see? Where, for example, we're talking about claymation. Would you like to do, so will you not, what kind of tools would you like to use in claymation? And I just want to say, this is a fourth grade class. Okay, so they start very young. So the girls have used iMovie before, and they said, okay, we can use iMovie. I would like to use iMovie. You take pictures. We do our storyboarding. So I gave them the storyboards, and some of the students were like, okay, I can use Kami, for example, to do the drawing in my storyboard. Or some of them like, no, I prefer to print it and then go ahead and then recreate using the clay and taking pictures and doing iMovie. So I said, okay, that works. Another student was like, you know what? I want to tell the story, but I don't want to use a claymation. I want to use Osobot to tell the story of the seed. I want the Osobot to be the seed and sort of tell you that story. I said, okay, go ahead. If you want to use Osobot, we'll use Osobot. So we do have those tools, and they're flexible. So then another student said, you know what? I want to tell my story, because they're obsessed with GIFs. And it says like, I want to tell my story, but I want to tell my story using GIFs. And I said, okay, let's see how that looks. If you can't tell the story, if you can have the components that the story requires, if you find GIFs for that, then okay, I'm open for that. So then that student went on and tried GIFs to show their story. Then some of the students, I usually sometimes use Kahoot sort of to have the students review things that we have. Is fun. They like reviewing, playing games. The other day, the students said, can we try quizzes instead? I said, okay, maybe it has some benefits that I haven't tried, and I'm open for it. So I tried it. And I always tell the girls or the students, the boys, whoever I'm teaching, I said, I'm open to try tools. So I want to model that whatever tools we have, we are learning together. So I might not be able to use it at its full potential, but we are open to learn, and we're open to bring tools that help us learn better. And so if that helped them learn better, then I'll learn it myself. So sort of that process. I just wanted to share, that it's okay to be vulnerable. We don't know all the tools. There's always going to be a new tool to try. Just keeping up with what the students, interests are, what your, how flexible you are, and making sure that every child is represented in your classroom. That every child has the same opportunity. So, and that's it for my presentation. And if you have any questions, please let me know, and I'll be happy to answer them. So I see a question that says, what are the current challenges the school systems face in terms of switching between technologies and upgrading? Yeah, I think it depends, right? So I feel that some of the challenges so sometimes it's us educators, we are used to a certain tool. And as educators, we like the comfort to know that tool works. I'm used to it. I'm scared to try something different. So it's sometimes in the educators. Sometimes it falls into the cost. How costly is that? How costly is it to get that new technology or upgrading the new technology? So I know there's like this sort of technology device. Some people can have fancier tools, but again, it's not about the fancy tools. You can do so much with a tool that is not as fancy. It's just meeting the learner's needs. So the challenges could be the cost, challenges can be the comfort that the teachers are, and that's one big push. I've seen people fight really for, I like this tool, I want this tool, we cannot live without this tool. So I think that too. So it's one of those challenges too, like at our comfort level with the tools. It's just too many tools to learn. And I said it takes us, before the pandemic itself, people were kind of afraid to try some tools, and now we're forced to do this, and sort of like we have to, and so you just want to have that comfort. Absolutely. So the question is, digital adoption has taken a quantum leap in education sector. Do you see this behavior to prevail? Absolutely. I think there's no way that we can go back. I think parents are aware of what things happen now in the classroom. It's like sort of like an open door. So and we learn, like kids want that. I'm telling you, they ask for it. I want to use this tool. I want that. So we cannot not use them. So I think it's going to continue to grow, especially with new things like AI, the metaverse. Like I just don't see us not growing and continue to prevail post-COVID. And the situations now where we have this closing and openings, it's really important that we make hybrid education and the use of technology to stay. It's just no other choice. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for sharing such valuable inputs. It was a pleasure having you with us today.